Hey, thanks for coming out tonight. This is an amazing opportunity, and I'm so honored to be sitting side by side with this panel. I really appreciate the presentation that we just heard about kind of the need and the thought that needs to go in really analyzing what we have in our community and thinking about the importance of facilities. I moved to this community 20 years ago, and at that time I had children I had a bun in the oven, not my oven, my wife's oven, and three sons that were, just about school age and just starting school. And at that time, I was about 6 or 7 years into my practice as a young architect, and I love what I do. I'm a school planner, and I had the opportunity to tour South Kitsap School District with the administration at that time. They were considering a new school bond for a new high school, and that was 20 years ago. That was actually it was over 20 years ago, in 1995. And I at that time, I toured around and saw the community of Port Orchard, and I really fell in love. I saw the potential. I saw kind of the vibe of just being a little bit removed from, a big population center, but having a real down-home focus, and the idea of building a second high school and being involved in that, and then potentially having my kids go to that high school, it was so exciting for me. And so I on the prospect of maybe working on that project, moved the family, and what a wonderful time. And I'm so glad we made that move. I've really been blessed living here. But it's really interesting to see that, now my kids are done with college. My oldest is almost 30 years old, and we're still talking about the exact same thing. It's fascinating to me. And now I'm one of those that are, a little bit older and, maybe kind of embedded in opinions about it. We have a fascinating challenge in front of us as a South Kitsap community, and as professionals and as parents and as students, as board members. We have a big job in front of us to really think about consideration for our school facilities. One of the important things that we do as school architects and planners is we think about the steps needed to take to make good decisions. And it's generally around what type of facility planning do we want to do? How does that process look? What is it? It's generally centered around identifying and addressing, needs, and then trying to look in the future, and that can be difficult, especially when there's so many existing needs that you almost become overwhelmed. I think Brian was kind of getting to the quick on that. You looked at the percentage of the facilities that are tired and aging and eligible for funding. That is incredibly unusual. We do facility planning all over the state of Washington. I've been a school architect for 30 years. We work with many different districts, and South Kitsap is unique. It really is. It's unusual to have a fleet of facilities like we have that are ready, and they're ready for that more than a coat of paint. They might be ready for a new start or retirement and maybe a new beginning. So from a facility planning standpoint, it's an ominous task. We need to really consider the capacity of our facilities, the physical conditions, how are they performing as vessels for our students to be successful. Why do we do this planning? Well, it's our responsibility because, as we know, our buildings are aging, our community is growing. You see all these houses being built. it was really interesting to see the McCleary responsibility to not only provide basic education, but to provide excellent education so that our students are competitive and can be successful and can win in this world. And to do that, you need great facilities. You need great teachers. You need great possibilities to be achieved. And so that's a really important step. So learning vision, quality of teaching and learning, having a solid educational mission are really important steps. What do we hope to achieve? We hope to achieve student-centered facility designs that are flexible and adaptable for the future, appropriate for contemporary learning, inspiring healthy environments that are safe, that are operationally cost efficient. I think one thing I've learned about being in Port Orchard, you need to make sure that the dollars you spend are smart dollars. They need to be not so focused on the latest and the greatest, but the most solid and the most sustainable, long-lasting, durable facility. I think those are the characteristics of the facilities we need to consider. So now you're going to start to see some of the questions that you've asked me to respond to. We work with a bunch of districts all over the state and in Oregon. It's interesting to look at Oregon's funding model. It's quite a bit different than Washington. They're just starting a SCAP type of program where they're assisting, but they have a lower threshold. It's 50+1 for school bonds. It's really an interesting difference. How often do other school districts remodel their school? A lot more often than we do, I'll tell you that. There is a glut of school construction going on right now. We missed a window by 30-some votes, and it's sad. Right now, our new high school would be building foundations. In the spring, we would be starting foundation work, and we would be looking forward to walls being built in the early summer, late spring, and we would be opening school in 2019. That's what would be happening if we had 30 more votes, or 40 more votes, or whatever the number was. I mean, that's how close we were, and we would have gotten it at a rate that would have been competitive. It would have been challenging in this market, but we would have done well. We have a lot to accomplish and a lot of work to do to get that next bond passed. So where do we start? It starts with this community really owning it and wanting it and being involved. Asking these questions, seeking answers, coming together. That's what we have to do. We need to really think about smart facility construction and design that isn't over the top. It needs to be a right fit for us. We need to make it right for our community, and it needs to work, and it needs to work well for Port Orchard and for our South Kitsap community. There's a really interesting question. Brian kind of addressed it as well. What about adapting existing facilities? Is that a smart approach? We could take that approach. It's probably not the first step in maybe a grand plan. It might be a step 10 or 11 down the road. It's interesting. Tacoma Public Schools has a school. It's called SOTA. It's the School of the Arts. It's in downtown Tacoma, and it has established a presence in an urban fabric with different storefronts. It's kind of an interesting concept. It's probably not our first step, but could be considered in the future. It's an interesting concept, an interesting question. Things that jump out at me as challenges in our industry to be most current is really thinking about flexibility and timelessness and adapting technology so that we are competitive, so our students are successful. We are learning a lot now about designing high school facilities that adapt well to different learning styles, and that's something that's really, really important. A facility can really be adept to that and be successful in that arena, and the less rigid a facility is, the more adaptable for successful models and different teaching styles. What improvements are in today's schools compared to when South Kitsap schools were built? Well, quite a bit different. This high school was built basically in two eras, 1962 and 1979. You probably would keep and build on the 1979 part of this campus, which is about 250,000 square feet. The 1962 portion of the campus, which is about, maybe 50 to 60,000 square feet, it's tired, and probably the best dollars forward would be to rebuild that. At South Colby, that's a building that was built in the 50s. You wouldn't build on that. Maybe if it was a historically significant structure and you really had a love for something grand and its position, but I don't think South Colby is that. Cedar Heights, no, no. It's a facility that was built in a different era, and we're seeing people and districts invest smart and not necessarily chase dollars. And you'd be chasing dollars down a drain at Cedar Heights if you tried to do that. So smart design and smart thought, it comes with a good plan. Developing that plan, that roadmap. Another really interesting question is, what is a good approach for systematically addressing ongoing facility? Again, I really appreciated Brian's presentation. There's operations and maintenance, and unfortunately, we've had to pull from the same pot to do everything in our district for decades. And that's tough. It's really, really tough. And it's just not smart. I mean, think about it. It's kind of like your monthly bills that you have every month. Well, you have to build a new roof or replace a roof, or you have to replace your furnace, or your water heater went out. Where's that? Hopefully, you've got some funding set aside for those rainy day events. That's normal, proper fiscal planning. We don't have that account set up for capital facilities. We just don't, because we haven't, as a community, supported that. So we need to really take a hard look at ourselves and think about what that means, and think about our aging fleet. Well, we've got all those options in front of us. We can renovate, we can replace, we could expand, repurpose. Is the district planning to build a new high school? Well, yeah, the last 4 bond issues, or was it 5? It's 5. Back to 96, then 2007, and then 3 in 2016 and 17. It was all to build a new high school. One of them was to also build a new elementary, and actually one of them was to do build a new high school and really look at existing facilities. We've lost every time. We've come close, and then other times we've not come so close. This was the plan to build on the old Clifton Road site, a new high school, approximately 40 of the 50 acres, planned for a future elementary school. That was kind of the last plan that was sent out. Looked a lot like the plan in 07 and looked a lot like the plan in 96. Maybe we need to explore that, and maybe we need to take a new look at how we want to spend our first dollars. I think that might be a really important conversation in this community, because we've gone 0 for 5, So maybe that's something we need to really address. This is kind of what that expanded plan looked like, or could look like. There wasn't a lot of effort put into design because there was no funds to do that. It takes money to do that, to plan and design future facilities. How does South Kitsap Capital Projects program compare with other districts? Not well, I'll be honest with you. That's kind of a basic, and maybe it's a curt response to this question. But without funding, you're at a disadvantage. I will agree that the facilities and maintenance staff, the commitment that the school board and the superintendent and the district in general have towards maintaining their facilities as best they can on a shoestring budget is impressive. And you should be so proud of your team that does that. I know I worked side by side with the team and have seen the priorities come forward to be effective, and I'm really proud to be a South Kitsap resident. But it's tough, and we need to think about it as a community. So how do we pay for it? How do other districts financially maintain their buildings? Well, they have a plan. They have a plan that renews every 6 to 8 years. That's what we see other districts do. We see other districts dedicate significant dollars towards new and replacement, but then they also set aside tens of millions of dollars to maintain and do major capital improvements, technology improvements at their existing facilities. A balanced plan is an effective plan. We've heard different models, capital levies, bonds, financing options. Typical construction costs, oh boy. Let's talk about that. It starts with property. You need, to build a new high school, you need approximately the size property you have, about 40 acres. That's a really good fit. We built Mount Tahoma High School on about that same footprint of land with a stadium. A middle school, about 15 to 20 acres, and elementary, about 10. That's kind of your basic needs. Why are cost projections so high? It's the price of doing business. It's our economy. It's the great country we live in. And we should embrace that and not be ashamed of it. Other districts do. Other communities support their facilities. It's the price of doing business. You've got to step up and you've got to answer the call if the need is there. If you decide not to, then that's a decision you make as a community, but then you need to be real honest with yourselves and with the outcome of that. What is the real price of a new building, and what is included in those proposed costs? I really appreciated, again, I want to thank Brian. He identified the OSPI guidelines for costs for facilities. Actually, at high school level, it's $130 for that state funding piece. If you're building a facility for 1,800 students, that's going to equate to about a 230,000 square foot facility, which is about what we were planning for last time. Maybe a good budget would be $230 to $250. So looking at cost projections, these numbers are not what it costs to build your house. They range in construction dollars from $300 to $450 per square foot to build a room like this versus a classroom. You can see $300 to $500. It's in that range. Construction dollars today, that's what it costs today. If you build a facility that size, you consider site costs, you consider escalation, you consider project development, you're talking $140 to $150 million. That's the price of doing business. Those are, if you look at statewide average, you look at the last high schools built, one in Pullman, Washington, one in Tahoma, one at North Mason, one in Enumclaw, another one in North Creek up in Bothell. The average cost is right around these numbers. It's in rural, it's in urban. You're looking at a construction dollar probably right now upwards of $400. With project development costs, you add another 45 to 50%. And so this is the price of doing business. It costs money to build buildings. These are recent costs. There was a specific question about North Mason High School. 2014, a much smaller on an existing site. At that time, construction dollars were $247. You escalate those forward, that's about $340 today. It's not outlandish what we've been asking for. We've been asking for modest budgets. Our total project schedule, how long does it take? It's hard to vote for something you can't see. Why don't we design it first? Well, it costs money. It costs 6 to 10% of the cost of a building to design it. Some districts front fund that and actually come prepared when the bond passes because they've front-funded design through past state funding that they've set aside for design. So they save on the escalation. When the bond passes, they're shovel ready. We're not in that place. We're in the place where we're behind. When we pass, we're going to not be building for 3 years, and we got to pay for that escalation. Good news, bad news. If you want it, you got to support it. You got to get behind it. It costs money, but there's benefits. There's benefits to our community, and we're a proud community. We should do it. So let's continue this conversation. Thanks for the time, and I'm so excited to be here.